is pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
Yo, who say you gotta be a big man to compete in the NBA?
Not us, Sheldon.
That's right. Alan and Jerome. That's us. We gonna creep on in.
Creeping like a creeper.
And drop some Stephon Marbury inner city funk. I'd love to see the face of the fool trying to D my slamming moves to the hole. Yo, David, you may be bigger than me, but you need to get yourself some Coppertone lotion.
Why that, baby?
Cause you just got burned.
With the second pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, the San Antonio Spurs select Dylan Harper from Rutgers University.
The 19-year-old Dylan Harper out of Rutgers. This is, of course, a family and a team, as Ace Bailey cheers him on, that knows this process and stage well. Dylan's mother, Maria, who he is very close with, coached him from kindergarten to high school. His brother has NBA experience currently with the Detroit Pistons. And of course, his father, Ron, was the 8th pick in 1986. He played 15 seasons in the NBA and won 5 championships. Now, Dylan set the Rutgers record for total points for a freshman, as again, he makes his way over to his teammate. We heard him earlier with Monica McNutt saying how much it meant that they were able to share this night together. 2 teammates hopeful to hear their name called. A hug for Agent Bill Duffy as well. But Jay, you see him as probably the best pick-and-roll guard in the draft. Is that right?
Yeah, a lefty who's the best pick-and-roll guard in this draft, in my view. A 3-level scorer with tremendous body control. A terrific finisher at the rim through contact. He shot 67% at the rim, but he was also excellent as a pick-and-roll ball handler. Really good in transition. He's just a polished offensive player with really good footwork. But when he gets into any sort of screen roll situation, he attacks the secondary defender and even goes after the tertiary defender and gets all the way to the rim. He can finish with his right or his left hand. He gets fouled and he gets to the foul line. He plays with pace, he's patient, and he makes really good reads. He gets an advantage, and then he keeps it and takes advantage of it. He's an excellent playmaker once he gets into the lane. He can pass it. Even though 75% of his buckets were unassisted, he found Ace Bailey a lot, but he's a good passer. He just needs to improve as a shooter. But 17 games, he had 20 or more. His physicality, a big part of that, and had 35 points in 2 straight games. He was the only player in the country to do that, and the only player in the last 20 years in a major conference to do that. Dylan Harper is the real deal.
Later that same evening,
The 14th pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, the San Antonio Spurs select Carter Bryant from the University of Arizona.
I think this quote from Arizona head coach Tommy Lloyd sums up Carter Bryant pretty well. He says, quote, "He checks 2 boxes that are really hard to check. He's an elite talent and he has elite character." He comes from a basketball family. His father played college ball at Long Beach State. His grandfather is a member of the Deaf USA Basketball Hall of Fame. So his mom is a sign language interpreter, and Carter is fluent in American Sign. And on the court, Jay, he seems like the prototype for what everyone I think is looking for a switchable defender, sort of the perfect basketball build and an even better person. It sounds like he hit the lottery, literally.
Yeah, another 3-and-D guy that we talked about a little bit earlier. His mom played volleyball at Arizona. He comes from an athletic family. He only averaged about 6 points and 4 rebounds a game, but he made 39 threes on the year. He shot 37% from 3, and he's a versatile defender. He's got size, he's got length, and he's got excellent athleticism. So as a wing, he's got a tremendous amount of potential as a switchable defender, as you say, and he can hit a standstill three-point shot. So he can guard 1 through 4. He was second on the Arizona team in block shots. His assignment when he was the primary defender, he held his assignment to 37%.
Hey YouTube, what's going on? Mark here. Happy 4th of July weekend to all. We had a great 4th of July Monte Carlo 400 at work for a special Wednesday edition of the Coming and Clutch series, and I apologize. I apologize for the inconvenience today about how you were supposed to get some Sandy Ridge content recorded today, whether it be here on YouTube or over on TikTok, and turns out while I was waiting out the phone battery, instead of, when it got to 99%, normally when it gets to 99%, I'm like out of the bed, that's just done chilling, relaxing. I go to the bathroom, I get my shoes on and socks, I wash my hands, and I'm out and away. By the time it either stays at 90, it's still at 99% by the time it reaches 100. But I was so comfortable in bed that, I fell asleep, and then I decided to take a nap instead. So, but we don't have to work tomorrow or Friday, and of course we got Saturday and Sunday, so we don't have to go back to work till Monday. So therefore, we got plenty of time to rebound from this. So don't you worry. So therefore, I will try to record something tomorrow or Thursday, depends on what I do or don't do. Only time will tell. So therefore, we're here to recap the Spurs offseason so far. So let's start off with the 2 draft picks. Dylan Harper, aka Ron Harper's son, and Carter Bryant, aka Kobe Bryant's nephew. So let's get the first thing out of the way. Will they be anything that their father and uncle, like your uncle, were? Will Dylan Harper be anywhere near his dad's level? Will Bryant be anywhere near his uncle's level? And the answer is pretty simple. Absolutely not. Kind of like how Dale Jr. was nowhere near his father's level. I mean, speaking as a Dale Sr. fan in NASCAR, and we'll talk about NASCAR on the second half of the video. We all know, everybody knows, Cal Petty was nowhere near the level of his dad, the King Richard Petty. Family members are not meant to be like each other. It's the same. It goes for any sport, and basketball is no exception. So of course, Carter Bryant will be good, but he won't be like crazy good like his uncle was. Considering growing up a Spurs fan as a kid in the NBA's heyday, I hated his uncle as a player, and that's ironic. The guy who I hated the most in the NBA growing up a kid, the effect of how many times he killed my team in the playoffs, his nephew now plays for my team. Kind of like a full circle moment. So maybe it'll be some family redemption from kid years where he can actually get some redemption for how his uncle used to kick our asses in the playoffs every year, except for those 2 years in 99 and 03 when we beat him to win the championship in both years. So, and I was 19 years old, and the Spurs and the Lakers played each other in the playoffs for the last time. Back then, I had a different mindset as a 19-year-old compared to a 31-year-old now in 2025. Because back then, I thought, you guys remember how Kobe got hurt towards the end of the regular season? And how this dumbass I went to high school with, that also was playing Polaris with me? And even though he graduated a year early from both because he didn't have to switch classes like I did in the middle of 11-12. I mean, he was probably the biggest Spurs hater I went to high school with. And, he was also a dickhead, too. So, therefore, I'm not going to say exactly who it was. But, when he found out the Spurs were playing the Lakers and Kobe was out for the playoff, obviously, he kind of spoke maybe the truth at the time. Who knows? We'll never know how this outcome, what I'm about to tell you. But he had to be a dickhead about it, saying, ooh, but you guys wouldn't stand a chance and you would lose if you had Kobe. Well, and nowadays, I think, that would have been nice to see Kobe and Tim duke it out in the playoffs one last time before their NBA careers are over. But back when I was 19, I was more biased towards the Spurs compared to now. Back when I was a youngster, I was still way biased towards the Spurs, especially in the Alamodome years and in the early years of the SBC Center. But I started to get a little better as time went on, the older I got. So therefore, even at 19, I still had to work on my bias to the point where I thought to myself, well, it wouldn't make a difference. Even if Kobe was playing, guess what? We would still beat their asses and sweep them. But now that I think about it, that probably wouldn't have been the case. Kobe would have made it difficult on us. Who knows if we win our night series tonight if we played and never got injured during the end of the regular season. But now that I think of it, it's now that I'm older, maybe since I was only 19 back then, I would think it still would have been easy for us to win and sweep them or beat them in 5. But now that I think about it, as I'm older and more mature and less biased towards the Spurs, I feel like it would have been nice to see Kobe and Tim duke it at least one more time before they both hung it up, and both in the Live in La Vida Labyrinth here in 2016. So therefore, Yeah, so maybe even though Carter, we all know Carter will nowhere be near his uncle's level. I'm hoping he can be almost as good as him. He doesn't have to be great like him or goated. I want him to be just as good as his uncle was, without all the crazy goated accomplishments. Because we know, he's not going to be a carbon copy paste of his uncle. From when he was in Los Angeles all those years, but you know, maybe he could sneak in a little redemption when his uncle used to, murder us in the playoffs every year during the Lakers Spurs rivalry of the NBA's heyday. And Dylan Harper, on the other hand, obviously we all know he will never be anywhere near his dad Ron's level, but he can be just as good, And since obviously I already knew Chris Paul was gone, because that's why they're focusing on Harper as the next big star in the point guard position, and so therefore we will talk. And let's talk about it now. So as far as players we're going to lose on the team, or we already lost. I already know. Okay, I met Jordan McLaughlin last year at the annual Spurs Cavs game here in Ohio, and when Carter Bryant picked his jersey number 11, that was McLaughlin's number. The J-Mac used at the end of last season when he came over from Sacramento in the Swipa trade. But that just leads me to know. Then it leads me knowing damn well that I already know that McLaughlin's gone. They haven't officially announced it yet, but. Do you remember when Dominique Wilkins was the last player on the Spurs to wear 21 before Tim Duncan? Well, when they drafted Duncan, this white version of the jersey, the 90s black letter Alamo Dome Fiesta jerseys, the white one, kind of like this one, but like the 90s version without all the colors and everything, just the black and the silver. Well, when they drafted Duncan, and had his 21 jersey hanging in the back behind where Popovich was sitting in that room. That's how most Spurs fans before I came aboard knew that Dominique Wilkins was gone. It's the same thing with me now. Another full circle moment. When I saw that Carter Bryant picked number 11, his jersey number, that was my cue, making me that was the official confirmation that we all know that J-Mac is not going to be coming back to the team, because even if he wanted to stay in San Antonio, guess what? What the fuck jersey number is he gonna change it to from number 11? Because damn well he won't want to stay because someone took his number. So that's how I know that J-Mac is gone. They just haven't officially announced it yet. So therefore, I already know he's gonna be leaving. So therefore, I know this because of the whole Dominique Wilkins and the jersey number 21 thing with Duncan taking the 21, knowing that how most Spurs fans at the time knew that Dominique was gone, because he was only brought in to back up Sean Elliott originally, but we all know how that went, so it didn't quite work out so well. That's why Neek played a bigger role in the Spurs than he was supposed to that nightmare 96-97 season for most Spurs fans before me. So therefore, and of course, Harper picked, he that shall not be named number. So that's the perfect way to erase that piece of shit from our history. And we all know that jersey may or may not get retired. And if it does, it won't be under that backstabbing jailbreak piece of shit's name. That's for damn sure. Because of the way he left us and everything. And the fact that, they won't be Eddie Lemmings, whether they're Spurs fans or not, want to say he brought us a championship, which we all know wasn't the case. It's not like he didn't do it all by himself. It's not like he turned into 2003 Duncan. Like, if anybody brought us a championship, and I guess in terms of a carry job, that was 2003 Duncan more than anything, because 2003 Duncan carried a team of nobodies to the Spurs' second ring. Robinson was washed up, and at the end of his career, Manu and Tony were still role players, and they weren't the players they eventually turned out to be yet, because Ginobili was only a rookie. Parker was still only a second-year player. There was a lot of young players who were were no names, like Bowen, Steven Jackson, Speedy Claxton, Malik Rose, those people. And of course, you had a bunch of veterans now at the end of their careers and no longer the same player they were when they played for their original teams back when they got more playing time, and they were like great players, Kevin Willis was like that too, but he got more playing time than the likes of Steve Kerr, Danny Ferry, Steve Smith. Willis got more playing time than them. And then, of course, you had Speedy Claxton, who was starting to come into his own after getting his original rookie season wiped out in the 2000-2001 season during the preseason due to an ACL injury. players used to have their original rookie season wiped out because some injury was fucking them up in the beginning, but then they got their redemption. What turned out their rookie season turned out to be what should have been their second season. That's a story for another day, another video. But yeah, that was the carry job. That 2014 team, there was a lot of great players on there where everybody did their part. And I thought basketball was a team sport, and that's what that 2014 Spurs team was. It was a team effort that won us a championship, and the Jailbirds happened to be one of the top players on the team alongside a 38-year-old Duncan, Ginobili and Parker, who still had a lot in the tank. Boris Diaw came off the bench and did a hell of a job. Splitter got his redemption from when he got blocked by LaFleur and 6 in the finals in Game 2, or he blocked Wade in Game 5. So therefore, it would have been more fitting if it was on LaFleur and 6 in the finals. But either way, he blocked a Heat player, so that was basically his redemption from Heat getting his dunk blocked and getting a blowout Game 2 loss the year before. So he was, the fraud only got not defensive player of the year, and finals MVP because he had the job of locking up LaFleur and 6 in the finals and making him his bitch. So anybody could have won those finals MVPs. It just, was a coincidence. Somebody had to win it, right? They could have picked anybody, but it was just a random draw since it was, the beautiful game. That's what it was called. So therefore, but true Spurs fans know for a fact that it was a team sport and he did not do it by himself. So therefore, and of course, we heard that, he's already I hope he... Number 2 was bad juju, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Because apparently he has an injury to the point where he's going to miss his Summer League debut. And, I hope he really didn't bring his uncle with them, considering, I saw there's oh my God, he picked jersey number 2 and we're starting this bullshit already. I hope this turns out to be completely different from the previous jersey number 2, but in the NBA, you just never know what's going to happen next, or NASCAR, any sport, because, it's all about the business, anything can happen, and all about the business, we'll get to that momentarily, but, but hopefully, he can make a quick recovery just in time to maybe make his actual big boy debut in the big league come October when we're in the middle of season 6. Season 5 Adventures in Autumn. Yeah, so season 5. So I think we're on the time of Night of the Century. We'll start the NBA season, and Harper and Bryant will start their rookie season. So therefore, a lot to look forward to, depending on Harper's health condition in terms of his injury. That's probably going to make him miss the first part of his summer league action. But you never know. Now, for the players that we gained and lost so far, I will start with the sad stuff so far. We lost my homeboy, Mamu Kelashvili. This is why in 2020, 2021, 2019, 2020, and 2021, when we started, when we saw the first, nightmare seasons in 96, 97, we started seeing nightmare seasons to the way we had no playoff action, which is something as a Spurs fan I'm still not used to even after 6 years. It's I was very skeptical about picking current players after Duncan retired, to cheer for, because almost every single current player I picked on the Spurs ever since Duncan hung up the jersey, they've left the fucking team. And so this one adds another to the list, Mamu Kelashvili. I finally met this homeboy of mine after picking him to cheer for at the end of Wembanyama's rookie season, after he played so good to end that 2023-24 season. And then every time he played in the last year in Wemby's second season, he always made a difference, and the Spurs really blew it with him because he was supposed to be the next version of Manu Ginobili, and unfortunately the Spurs did not use him properly. He only got minutes every now and then off the bench, and the only time he got big time minutes whenever a important starter was missing a good chunk of time, he was inserted to the starting lineup. Just think of that one game where he tore that shit up like Terry Labonte and had a career high. And this is another thing that drives me crazy as a Spurs fan. Every time a MFer leaves the Spurs, they turn into prime MJ with somebody else, whereas they get more minutes over there than they did with San Antonio. So when he had Mamu had that career high, I can't remember which team it was against, but man, now that he's in Toronto, watch him get more playing time over there, and he starts doing that more with them than he ever did with us. I fucking hate it here. So, therefore, DeJounte Murray, Derek White, Lonnie Walker IV, and even DeRozan, everything, they left the Spurs, they got more minutes and more playing time and more freedom to do whatever they wanted on the floor, and that's why they turned into prime MJ with teams they joined after the Spurs. Because in San Antonio, unless your name is Wembanyama, Fox, or Castle, you won't be doing that fucking shit here. Or it depends on who or who earns what spot on the 2025-26 roster for 29th year as a fan with Harper and Bryant. So we'll just have to wait and see. But, man, I am going to miss you, Mamu. I'm so glad I got to meet you. And I'm just thankful I didn't buy your jersey or any of the other homeboys on the Spurs that I picked that didn't believe in the team. And I was going to do something with that picture of you and I at the Spurs-Cavs game here in Ohio and hang it up in the room, but now I can't because you're fucking gone now and in Toronto. So, I don't know, man. And then, of course, the free agent we signed, Luke Cornett. So, the thing is, the truth is, I wanted that Maximet guy. I can't, Raynard, however the fuck you say his name, that other French dude that's almost the size, almost just as tall as the big as Wemby in terms of height. I wanted him, so he can, help Wemby in the front court in the starting lineup. That way he doesn't have to do all the work and shit. But it turns out we traded away the 38th pick there. Most likely would have you picked him with before the second round even started. So instead, we took one of that big from Boston named Luke Cornett. We signed him. So therefore, maybe if, we get him in the starting lineup, well, whether we do or not, we also still need another power forward and center so we can have enough depth at the front court position, center and power forward. Even if we do pick up another one, especially a younger one that has little minimal experience in the NBA in terms of years they played in the league. As a Biyombo fan, I hate to say this, but if we sign another power forward / center, which we most likely will, that pretty much confirms that Biyombo's gone. So therefore, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But, I know a lot of people, like Celtics fans, did not like Cornett because, he thought he was inconsistent, was a garbage player, and was inconsistent. But the majority of Celtics fans thought he was good. But I never seen him play, and I don't really recall ever watching him play when the Spurs played him last year. But we'll just have to wait and see how he does. So, I can't judge the man on his gameplay if I've never seen him play, because I remember my mom and dad taught me over the years. It's just like food. You never know until you try. You give them a chance to show you their worth. So I'm going to give Cornett a chance to see if he's a good bet, front court partner to Wembanyama or not, and if he's not another power forward center, one of them's going to be the front court starter with Wemby, and the other one's going to come off the bench for Wemby. Or Cornett. So we'll just have to wait and see. I'm not sure what they're going to do with Sohan, but that's a story for later in the offseason. So therefore, this 29th year San Antonio Spurs basketball, as a fan, is going to be looking nice. So now let's talk about, the second half, the other end of the spectrum of this, the news update video. We recap the Spurs offseason, so now we have to share some sad, unfortunate news in the world of NASCAR. Guess it was too good to be true with the writing being on the wall this whole time. Pitbull leaving, Chastain and SVG not going anywhere and being locked up for the foreseeable future, and Connor Zilic waiting in the wings. My father's favorite driver is the odd man out of Trackhouse, as Suarez will not be returning to the number 99 Chevrolet in 2026. And I was heartbroken to hear this news, more for my dad more than myself, because my dad has been a fan of this man since the 2016 MIS race weekend when him and I saw him beat Kyle Busch straight up in person on the last lap to get the win in the Cabela's 250 Busch Series race. Well, Dad, I'm sorry. Your driver, unfortunately, is out of a ride, at least for now, because, he will not be returning to the Trackhouse team that he, was the first, it was a team that nobody heard of when Pitbull and Justin Marks formed it in 2021 at the start of the vaccine year, and he was the team's first ever driver. So unfortunately, it looks like the team that he got helps get started from the ground up. The Trackhouse will not retain him next year, and you can pretty much see it coming. Even though I honestly did not want that to happen for the sake of you. But to all the realists out there, we all knew this was coming. Except even though for my dad, I personally didn't want it to come because my father was there. He's always been really big on Suarez since that 2016 Bush MIS race. When we were living La Vida Labrador with Kelly Berglund, and I met Kyle Busch's wife in the pits before that same race. Ironically, the wife of the guy who got passed by Suarez on the last lap, who has a teammate of his to win that race. So, okay. So let's get this straight like Scott Pruitt. So Chastain has been like their franchise driver since 2022, carrying the team on his back and doing everything they can. SVG is a road course merchant for the team, which is why they brought him in, considering like many other NASCAR, full-on NASCAR YouTubers that said SVG has just as many wins as Suarez and less starts than him. He came in at nobody heard of SVG in 2023 at the first ever Chicago Street Course race, and he ended up winning the son of a bitch because road courses are his bread and butter. Think about it, Montoya, Scott Pruitt, those people. It's like SVG is a modern day version of those guys, Borsed, Ron Fellows, road course ringers. So that's basically SVG nowadays, what those guys were back then. So of course that's why Trackhouse brought him in, knowing he would probably likely get easy wins at road courses while also trying to work on getting better at oval. So there's a good chance this weekend, even though I won't be watching because the weather for this coming Sunday is looking hell of a lot better than it did last week at the time when it said it was going to rain for most of the afternoon. So you just never know. What if SVG wins another road course race, which will this Sunday or even next Sunday after during the Brook Park Home Days weekend, which I will talk about in a separate, particular topic in a separate video. But all I know is, the only thing the only hints I'm giving away is we get to watch the Dodge Savemore 350 at Searsport next Sunday, and I'll explain why in another video. Sometime we record 4th of July content on here on the channel this coming week, this whole weekend. So therefore, what if SVG gets a win this coming Sunday or next Sunday at Sears Point? So they'll hope if he gets towards either one or both wins back to back, or one wins at one or the other, that could give him a confidence booster and motivate him to do better on the oval. So that's probably why obviously Chastain's their franchise driver, and they don't want to let SVG go because they just got him. It's only his rookie season, and they got Connor Zilic on the wings, so therefore Suarez was the one on the hot seat, and in order for him to save his job, he had to perform, and unfortunately he has not performed. So even though I secretly like him because of my dad, I hate to say it, but it was an easy choice of Trackhouse to part ways with Suarez considering he hasn't performed. They're more than likely going to get Connor Zilic into the number 99 to replace him or renumber it to 87. But if that's the case, I think my dream scenario, if they put Zilic in that car, whether they keep it as 99 or renumber it to 87, I would say if, Petty Enterprises with my boy Nemechek on the team, wins their lawsuit against, bitch-ass Rick Ware Racing, which is for sale, by the way, which could mean starting next year, no more of that talentless, slow bitch Cody Ware, which he'll be, joining the other talentless, slow bitch Quentin Half on the sidelines, in terms of, not being in NASCAR no more, because much like Quentin Half in 2020, 2021, Cody Ware has no fucking business being in NASCAR with how much of a talentless hack, a slow bitch, and a rolling, moving chicane that he always has been and always will be, and we already see that each and every week how much of a talentless hack, a slow bitch, and a talentless hack, a slow bitch, and a rolling, moving chicane. He proves how much of those three things he is each and every week. So with Rick Ware Racing being for sale, I hope that by next year those douchebags are gone and they are no longer in NASCAR, meaning we don't get to have to worry about bitch ass Cody Ware anymore. So my dream scenario is that happening, along with Petty Enterprise winning the lawsuit over those bitches, and getting a third charter and using it to open a seat for, Suarez. So therefore, if Connor Zellers goes to the number 99/87, depends on if Trackhouse renumbers it or not, or renumbers it to 87, it keeps it as 99, and Petty gets a third charter from bitch ass Wick Rail Racing if they win the lawsuit, which they most likely will. And I'm not saying I'm a Petty fan because Petty's a better team than Rick Ware. Then that means they could open up a third charter for Suarez and use an old Petty number that I don't know if they can use 44 because of the New York Racing Team, but if New York Racing Team goes away in the near future, then they can retain the rights to the 44 and or any Petty number for that matter, and give it to Suarez. And you know what that would mean? My father and I would be teammates on the Petty team, where I'd be John Hunter Nemechek and he'd be his usual Suarez. So that would be fucking awesome if, that would happen. But, crazier things than the simple dream scenarios have happened in the sport of NASCAR. So you just never know what's going to happen next. So therefore, my heart breaks for Suarez, but at the same time, at the end of the day, much like with the whole Mamu leaving the Spurs to go to the Raptors, at the end of the day, it's not about what the fans think or how they feel. It's about or how sad it is to see your favorite player leave, any of your favorite players or players you love on your favorite team leave your favorite team in basketball, or your favorite driver losing his ride, just a ride you would think he would keep forever. It's sad, but it's not what it's about, unfortunately. It's a business at the end of the day, which is why it's more about the money. So now my father, knows how I felt in 2013 when Montoya got canned from the Ganassi 42 Chevrolet in favor of Kyle Larson, and this is also that gives me Vietnam flashbacks to that time period when I lost Montoya and how sad I was that he got canned from the 42, which is part of the big reason why I was a big Kyle Larson hater, if not the number one Kyle Larson hater, because I was salty about Montoya losing the ride to Larson, even though Larson had a little bit of my scoring for losing Ty Dillon the truck championship at Homestead, the Ford 200 the year before. And that gave me Vietnam flashbacks to that. And this, this double bombshell that took place yesterday, 5 minutes apart from each other, with Mahmoud leaving the Spurs to go to the Raptors, and Suarez losing his ride, most likely Connor's Village, is giving me PTSD that 2016 NBA offseason as a Spurs fan, when all those Spurs players on that 2015-16 team that almost won the championship, that I end up loving, including my own favorite, all either retired or went to other teams to pursue the different another opportunities. So, man, could we be seeing the light at the end of the tunnel in 2026, kind of like how we kind of did in 2017, with a little bit of a hiccup in the middle in 2018 and 19, and then before the beginning of the end of how things were in January, February 2020, before COVID really gave us this new life in March through November, December 2020, and then January through February of 2021, they started getting the vaccines ready, and then March 2021 and onward, they got the vaccine finally were released, and people were getting them and making things safe again, and calmed COVID down and made everything, and it made people less and less likely for people to get it, to the point where it was never a big deal again. I mean, it did spike back up a little bit twice in the late summer 2021, and then Christmas time 2021, and going into the beginning of 2022. But by the time the weather broke in 2022 in March of that year, it basically was never any kind of a factor again. So that was our first normal year since 2019 and the first of the post-COVID years. So could history repeat itself in 2026, but in a different way? That whole pattern with, not the whole Montoya leaving the 42, getting canned with 42 for Larson, but that 2016 offseason as Spurs fan, where all those Spurs players, including Duncan, retired, and then or left other teams. Bonner retired, David West went to another team, Boris Diaw went to another team, Boban went to another team. Those players that we lost to get those replacements we got for them in 2016, 17, the first year without Duncan. I'm not saying it's going to be Live and La Vida Lab Rats Part 2, but there could be some really good things additional good things that could happen throughout the rest of 2020, this current 2025, and going into the first part of 2026, where a lot of good things could happen, like it did the rest of that 2016 calendar year going to 2017, even with all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes of my family nowadays, which I'll never talk about on YouTube. But I know history doesn't always repeat itself, but you never know. But at the same time, sometimes history does indeed repeat itself. So therefore, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But, you know, I wish Suarez nothing but the best in his, like, you know, future, where if he ever picks up another Winston Cup ride in 2026, you know, where either like Petty picks him up with the third charter, or if, you know, if there's no open Winston Cup ride available for him and no new team that has like picked up a third charter and expanded, he could go back to the Busch Grand National Series, you know, restart his career. But like, you know, Eric Eastup said, you know, when John, as a Nemechek fan, I can speak from experience. When Nemechek did it, he was still in his 20s and still had his whole career ahead of him. He was still young, you know. He worked his way up from Trucks to Craftsman to Busch to Winston in 2020, but when the front row motorsports thing didn't work out for him, despite nearly winning the Aaron's 499 in Talladega during the COVID edition of the COVID edition of Father's Day, the COVID Father's Day weekend, which was also known as the COVID version of the Aaron's Dream weekend. You know, despite all that near magical weekend / day, it didn't work out for him, apparently, but personally, I think, he personally felt that way, so he decided to make the big decision to go back to Craftsman Truck to restart his career, almost won the championship in 21 and 22, came back to the Busch Grand National Series in 2023 with Joe Gibson, did really well, including the Cabela's 250 that I was at, that he ended up winning. I finally got to see a driver I like win in person, even though it was Busch Grand National and it didn't mean as much. It'll be if he won at Winston Cup, and I wasn't there, and I saw it in person, but then he came back to Winston Cup with the Petties in 2024, and yeah, he did have the season from hell with occasional good runs at the Aaron's 499 and the Brickyard 400, where he was leading a good chunk of the Aaron's 499 and led a shitload of laps at the Brickyard before, you know, throwing it all in that last restart with Hemrick. But then now look at him. He's improving and starting to show his true potential. Winston Cup with the Petties, a team that has not been like a rally contender since the mid-1980s with the King, Richard Petty, and had hit rock bottom after Adam died in 2000. You know, that Nemechek and Eric Jones are slowly turning that team around this year, even though Nemechek has been outrunning Jones, kind of like a reversal from last year when Jones was outrunning Nemechek. So maybe if they pick up a third charter and win that lawsuit over the talentless bitch ass, you know, rolling chicane Rick team called Rick Ware Racing, and Cody Ware gets the fuck out, then maybe, you know, they can make room for Suarez, and Suarez can add some depth to the team and make them better than they actually already are. But if that doesn't work out, I have a feeling Suarez is going to go back to Busch Grand National and drive for Colleague. You know, I don't know how they're going to figure that out if he goes to Colleague, but it's up to the team owners to decide and the drivers. It's not up to us fans. Us fans can just create dream scenarios and what we think could happen. But, you know, I hope for my dad's sake, he picks up a Winston Cup ride. But if it's to go back to Busch Grand National, my father can cheer for him there. But even though it wouldn't be the same. But anyway, let's get the fuck off this thing. That's all I want to come on here and talk about. And as for the Luke Cornett thing that I forgot to address, I know he wore 40 in Boston, but guess who wears 40 in San Antonio? It's more than likely he'll stay, Harrison Barnes. So will Harrison Barnes give up the 40? Or will be Luke Cornett be forced to pick a different number? We'll just have to wait and find out throughout the rest of the course of the offseason. When the 2025-26 NBA season gets closer, you know, for my 20th year as a Spurs fan, as we all will get closer to the chase for the cup, which will start during the Mountain Dew Southern 500 at Darlington during the end of summer explosion, which will take place the day of the season 5 finale of Fun in the Sun. So therefore, only time will tell. But have a good night tonight and a better day tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Good night. And I will see you all for the next video, whenever that may be, which will most likely be either tomorrow, Thursday, and or Friday, and maybe, you know, whatever we may or may not do on Saturday or Sunday to, you know, celebrate this 4th of July weekend and close it out come Sunday. So therefore, I will try to get something recorded, I promise. So I don't know what it's going to be, but I will figure it out one way or another, and hopefully we can make it out in Sandy Ridge tomorrow to record some content, even though we were supposed to do that today, but unfortunately, you know, rest and relaxation got the best of us, causing us to take a nap and get some rest. So therefore, sometimes shit happens, you know, that out of your control, and, you know, you have to, like, you know, reschedule your plans and, you know, set them for another day. But anyway, and the last thing I wanted to say was happy War Button or Tiago Splitter or Malachi Branham 22nd birthday to my longtime friend since the Live and Love the Lab Rats here in 2016, Cassidy Rudy. So see you later, everyone. Go Spurs, bitch. Oh mama, Wembanyama, swipe on a fox.
Go Spurs, go!
This copyrighted telecast may not be reproduced, retransmitted, or used in any form without the authorized written consent of NASCAR Broadcasting. NASCAR would like to thank all of our fans for your support, and we hope you enjoyed today's broadcast.